What's up, you guys? It is way after midnight on what was Saturday night, so it's early Sunday morning when I'm recording this. We're here for our secret midnight sermons where I go into the Gnostic Gospels and read portions, and then we unpack and discuss. This playlist is called Secret Teachings of Jesus. You can find it on my channel. We have been doing this for a couple of years now. We've been in the Gospel of Philip for quite a while. It's a pretty thick one. It's these little portions of cryptic text that are meant to be meditated on and pondered. Before this, we did the Secret Book of James, I think it was called, or the Secret Gospel of James. I think it was the Secret Book of James. And James is Jesus' brother. And that was a whole nother vibe. It was a lot of scene work, dialogue. Jesus was a salty sass, if I have to, if I have to be real. I really like that side of Jesus when he's kind of like telling it like it is and giving people the business. Everybody always just... they always just advertise that porcelain plate Jesus. It's just so like nice, but he wasn't always. Sometimes he'd be pretty direct. So tonight's portion kind of stood out to me because I feel like it kind of piggybacks on something that I was listening to a rabbi talk about today in a Q&A to get people kind of prepared for like Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is tomorrow. I don't know when you're watching this, but according to me, it's tomorrow. Today is the September 23rd. So it's tomorrow, September 24th, starts at sundown and it goes until Monday on sundown. And it's a fast where we refrain from work. We abstain from food and water. We abstain from bathing and cleaning. We abstain from wearing oils or perfumes or makeup or like hair products, anything that like zhuzhes us up, and no leather. So basically we're doing extreme restriction of the desires of the flesh to receive for the self alone. Basically what that is doing is that we are suppressing our lower base urges so that the opponent cannot basically wreak havoc on us tomorrow. Like the opponent has no like jurisdiction tomorrow to mess with us. And so the rabbi was talking about how tomorrow is the day that we want to really confess those sins and say them out loud in prayer. And he was talking about on Rosh Hashanah, it's like we say them, quietly under our breath while the shofar is like blasting and, confusing the Satan so he can't hear what we're saying. But on Yom Kippur, the Satan is like nowhere to be found. And so it's like safe to like really confess all of our sins, self-empty as we manifest the new soul for atonement. The other parts that the rabbi was talking about, or the Rav, I'll get into as we unpack this portion. But basically, I will read you this probably poorly a couple of times, and then we will unpack it line for line. And just a caveat, I'm not a theologian. I was interested in reading the Gnostic Gospels, and I didn't know when I'd have time. And so I thought it'd be a great thing that we could do together on Saturday night. And I just kind of get these downloads and insights as I'm reading. Many times they are referencing Kabbalistic things that I studied, and sometimes it's just random insight. All right, well, so with no further ado, let's get this thing going. Our portion is entitled Christ Came. Sorry, there was a footnote that I just noticed that I didn't see before. I don't think it was. Okay. Christ came to purchase some, to save some, to redeem some. He purchased strangers and made them his own. And he brought back his own, whom he had laid down of his own will as a deposit. Not only when he appeared did he lay down his soul of his own will as a deposit, but from the beginning of the world he laid down the soul for the proper moment according to his will. Then he came forth to take it back, since it had been laid down as a deposit. It had fallen into the hands of robbers and had been stolen, but he saved it. And he redeemed the good in the world and the bad. So I'm going to say that again. Christ came to purchase some, to save some, to redeem some. He purchased strangers and made them his own. And he brought back his own, whom he had laid down of his own will as a deposit. Not only when he appeared did he lay the soul of his own will as a deposit, but from the beginning of the world he laid down the soul for the proper moment according to his will. Then he came forth to take it back, since it had been laid down as a deposit. It had fallen into the hands of robbers and had been stolen, and he saved it. And he redeemed the good in the world and the bad. I think one thing that makes these so choppy to read is that when you think it's going to be a comma, it's a period. And then when you think it should be a period, it's a comma. And so then it's just like, it feels like really weird, like bumper cars. Okay. So I think it's important to start with our imagination. Imagine Jesus the Christ as like this supernatural force that existed before Jesus of Nazareth incarnated on earth. So the Christ was in the upper realms already as a part of God. It was as the light, the eternal, condensed in consciousness and awakening. It's like more of the personality started to develop. Where is chart? Chart. Okay, so up here, this is like non-existence. This is the endless, I can't remember. This is there's three negative veils of existence, and one is the endless light, and one is the absolute void. So I can't remember, but we get less being as we go, more nothingness and more abstract. So here, Keter is the seed level of where the pure formless light here, this is an endless, vast expanse of pure source energy, pure source light here, unadulterated. And it condenses here and forms this puddle, so to speak, of light where it just gets so dense and builds so much pressure, and it crystallizes into more of a solid, and then it pushes through in a primordial point where it's like a light burst, right? So as this light is coming through, it's almost as if it's like the spark of, ooh, you know, when you think you're getting an idea, you're like, man, I feel really inspired. Like, I feel like I'm getting an idea. Like there's like this energy in your mind, but it's not like focused yet. It's like the focus starts happening. And these dimensions of God become to crystallize and become more specific. When it's here, Keter, it's all one thing. It's all just pure light. It's just pure source light. Like, see this in my hand here? It's like that ball of light. That white light back there contains all of the light of the spectrum, just like the light of the Creator. The light of the Creator contains all of everything of existence within the self, within one whole, within one unified mass. but there's no personality there, right? It's not personal. There's no categorization. It's just purely abstract. You can't even fathom. You can't get a concept around it. The moment that we put a concept around how abstract God is, we've put an engraven image on God, and then we're worshiping an engraven image, which is an idol, because it limits what God is. We're worshiping then a physical, limited, false representation of the truth of God. So in order for God to manifest as a personality that can have closer affinity with human consciousness, it has to go through these filtration systems, this light, right? And as it goes through these systems, it kind of separates and categorizes and becomes more specific and more nameable and more, like, each one of these things has a very focused purpose in use. And there's lots of different things in the world that are associated with these things. In fact, most of things can be found categorized in one of these 10 different dimensions, the Spherat. So we see that this is like pure Father in heaven up here, and it comes down and condenses and crystallizes until we get here. This is the heart center. This is the Christ center. This is the Son of God, Son of Man, right? It's in the middle. This is Earth down here. Not even Earth. This is the multiverse. This is all of physical reality, all that we know, all of outer space, all of physics, everything. The universe is expanding all the way out to that edge. That's what this is, right? This is like the universe expanding. So the Christ existed in spirit and as a force of nature, as a force of God, before the Christ became embodied as a human being. So I think that it's important to understand, like, almost picture it like a cartoon. Like, Christ is like this hero that's like up in the upper realms, and then like he needs to come to earth to do things, and so he has to come in and embody a body, and then he can leave and then doesn't need his body anymore. It's kind of like when people see angels. Angels don't really look like anthropomorphized beings with wings. I mean, that's how people see them when they see them, but that's because it's a force of energy that sometimes will appear or let itself be visualized by you, but only in a way that you can understand and comprehend if you need to, right? And so some people wouldn't recognize an angel if they were just perceiving a force around them or seeing a certain aspect, a force moving in their life, doing certain things or helping them with certain things. Some people wouldn't be able to put that together. So it's like, depending on what level of consciousness you're at, you might need things more anthropomorphized, more fleshed out, more visual, more like characters and people. So with that idea that Christ isn't just Jesus the person, so I've got like pen mark all over my hands. It's not just Jesus the person, Jesus of Nazareth. There's like this elevated spirit, right? The Christ consciousness that lives and is still working and has like assignments and missions to deal with, even when he's not here on the physical plane. Okay, so Christ came to purchase some, to save some, to redeem some. He purchased strangers and made them his own. And he brought back his own whom he had laid down of his own will as a deposit. Not only when he appeared did he lay down the soul of his own will as a deposit, but from the beginning of the world he laid down the soul, for the proper moment according to his will. Then he came forth to take it back, since it had been laid down as a deposit. It had fallen into the hands of robbers and had been stolen, but he saved it. and he redeemed the good in the world and the bad. Okay, so another thing I think would make good groundwork to begin to understand this portion is one of the stories that the Rob was talking about today. So this woman in the Zoom class or the Zoom meeting or whatever, her question was basically like, there are these great prophets in the Bible. And for instance, Abraham was told to sacrifice Isaac, his pride and joy, the child that he waited like 90 years for. Like his wife could not give birth. And then when she was like in her old age, a miracle happened. She gave birth. So the woman was like, okay, so Abraham is torn to shreds inside because God has told him to give Isaac up as a sacrifice. And he's like, surely this couldn't be right. Oh my God, now I've got to murder my son? Like, how does this even make sense? And so even though Abraham put himself out there and he was like, okay, like, are you really telling me to do this, God? Like, I'll do it, but like, it just doesn't seem right. And so like Isaac went with him and he was like, I know too, this is crazy, but like he did it willingly and he was an adult at that point. And so he had tikkun to work out too. Now, if you haven't been on this channel much, you may not know what tikkun is. So tikkun in the Hebrew tradition is sort of like karma. It's basically you are given an allotment in this life as a soul before you come here, like a little bag of problems. This is your density. Okay, so like in this world, matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. Same with non-physical. So every soul, their rent for being on earth, the whole point of us being here, this process, is to elevate this density, this darkness, this refuse of the universe that ultimately will become chaos, pain, destruction, evil if it's not transmuted. And so we come here to earth for the purpose of transmuting our allotted portion of density, of lead, of darkness, and turning that into gold while we're here. The elevated souls are given more density. That's what gives them their elevation. It's like they've had to keep turning this darkness into light and they're getting like turbocharged and like nuclear, right? So she's making a point. Her question was, okay, so Abraham agrees, like we've got to sacrifice Isaac. Okay, and so your tikkun then is like the certain weaknesses and struggles that you have in this life. Maybe even added in with your talents and your, the things that you're good at and your gifts, but also like who your parents are, key relationships that you'll have in your life, opportunities and failures. There are certain things that are just mapped out that are going to happen to you. And it's what you do with those experiences that, affects your tikkun. And so you see my scales back here. It's as if our density is on one side on the side of darkness. And so we're working in this life to elevate these sparks of light by laying down our soul, by dying to our ego, by breaking through those shells of what's called klipot. What it is like we have the light of the Creator inside of us and it's emanating out all the time. We have that connection with the Creator. And that sliver of Creator that we have within us is our spirit, and it's perfect. It doesn't need any correction. The soul is the part of ourselves that has the layers, the dimensions, the personality, the ego mixed in, right? So that's what gives us our individualism, our uniqueness. When Christ, like when God was in just the whole, there wasn't like a soul, God didn't have a soul. He doesn't have problems. He's so one-dimensional. God's so basic. The light is so simple. It's just love. It's just sharing. It's creation, right? So Jesus, the Christ, actually came here in a body and took on a soul. And what it's saying is that, well, we won't get there yet. Okay, so back to Abraham and Isaac and the whole tikkun thing, tikkun healing. So as we go through these challenges in our lives, facing the bully that or figuring out, the lesson behind what was that bully about, or my terrible father, or you're, this or that. It's like those things are given to us, those struggles that seem unfair, they are our assignments. And this is basically the workbook, the project that helps us turn our density into light by overcoming these struggles and these obstacles and learning from them and transforming and becoming less selfish and more sharing, less judgmental and more compassionate. Like, we have to take these traits that are vices and basically redeem them and bring them into a virtuous state. On our own, this is very difficult. We're constantly failing. The Christ consciousness, though, is such an elevated state that it's like it pulls us up. It lifts us up when we connect with it. And it helps us rise above our knotted, tangled fates. And it helps us heal the parts of ourselves that are causing us to go through cycles of pain and chaos and despair and just endless cycles of the same lessons over and over again. So the woman's question, Isaac was going to be the sacrifice. Isaac and Abraham had different tikkuns. Tikkun is usually, it gets really specific, but in a generalized way, tikkun is split up between two categories. You have a tikkun on the side of mercy. It means that you're overly merciful, you're overly giving, you're overly sharing. You can't take that, you don't have that killer instinct to take that decisive swing of the sword. You maybe have a hard time setting boundaries or doing something that may feel ruthless but necessary. The other tikkun is the side, a tikkun of judgment. And that is a person who maybe errs on the side of selfishness and maybe, errs on the side of being dishonest or, calculating. These people are sort of the darker narcissistic types that are, more about themselves and less about sharing. So, I mean, you know these people when you see them and they're really obvious and it's really like polarized. It's like, oh yeah, this person is a doormat and this person is an absolute like whatever, like they take advantage of everyone. So you see the difference, right? So Abraham is a person with a tikkun of mercy. And so for him, it was going against his every nature to think about harming another person, particularly his son. And so for Isaac had a tikkun of judgment. And all his life, he had a hard time receiving because he had all this judgment on him. And he, had selfish tendencies. And so for him, the correction was laying himself down as a sacrifice, something that he didn't do before, something that he hadn't done. So they're both in this moment, by their own free will, overcoming their tikkun and laying their soul down to do what the Creator wants and to build affinity with the light. And so at the last minute, right before Isaac is sacrificed, a ram shows up, a perfect, pure, pristine specimen of a ram. And Abraham was like, is this a joke? Is this a trick? Is this a prank? Like, am I supposed to use the ram now? Or am I supposed to use Isaac? Like, what's happening? And so an angel came and was like, no, wait, stop. We brought this. It was just a test. You passed. Like, you don't have to kill your son. And he's like, no, I'm gonna kill my son. Like, the Creator told me to kill my son. I'm gonna kill my son now. And they're like, no, you don't really have to kill his son. We were just kidding. Like, we went too far. Maybe it was bad. Maybe this was a bad trick. But this was a test. You don't have to don't kill your son. I don't know. I'm obeying the Creator. Like, we're over here trying to work out our tikkun, okay? And the creator came down and he was like, no, Isaac, like, you can listen to the angel. This is not a trick of the opponent. We're not like double tricking you. This isn't a trap. Like, you passed the test. Here is the ram. And now you can sacrifice the ram instead. So Isaac was reprieved. But the woman's point was that, like, but yeah, like, he obeyed the creator. He did it. But then he was saved and he got a son. But then, like, right after that, his wife died. and then the Rav was just like, waiting for her to continue on. And then she's like, and then Joseph, or Jacob, I can't remember. I always get Joseph and Jacob confused. Basically, the one that was sold into slavery, it was like he wanted to like be with this woman, but like she was married or something, and like he didn't have the affair, like he didn't have her, or like the like he abstained from having this woman, but then right after was like sold into slavery and like was in slavery for 12 years. But then the Rav was like, yeah, but after that he became like the top dog in like Egypt and like was in charge of like being the provider of everyone. Like he was in charge of the storehouse and he was in, reigned in like good abundance and stuff after that too. So she was basically like, how do we know what's right and wrong? And what's the point if like it's all like you do what you're supposed to do and then like your wife dies anyway, or like you do what you're supposed to do but then you're like sold into slavery. And it's just like, but the point of the Rav was making is that, yeah, and so he was like, it's not like we go through one challenge and then we get to watch MTV for the rest of our lives. He was like, it's not like these people were regular people. He was like, these are great Siddiqs. So he was like saying how these great Siddiqs live on the edge of light and darkness. And it's so funny because when he said that, I just started bawling because recently I'd written a poem. And when I write poems, they like come through like all at once, like almost like a sneeze. So I know that they're channeled. They're not just like me thinking of things. And I had written that in a poem that I live on the edge of light and darkness. And it was so crazy how true that was. I was like, yeah, that's true. I know what he's talking about. And basically what he was trying to get at is that, he was like, we're given this density to alchemize in this life. And so when they're given these challenges, it's like they're working off, they're turning this darkness that would be a force of chaos in this world, and they're revealing light that affects the whole planet. It elevates the consciousness of humanity. We're all in this together, right? And so our healing brings up the other people around us, because the most powerful vibration in the room, the most consistent and solid vibration of the room, affects everything else. So if that vibration is shitty, it's going to bring everything down. And if that vibration is super shitty and really consistent and like just unwavering, it's going to have an effect. But if somebody comes in and they're in an amazing vibration and they're consistent and they're determined, then that's going to be the most powerful thing in the room, right? So there's something in Job that says there will be lifting up by the cleanness of your hands. It's like when you do the work, when you elevate yourself, you elevate others with you, whether they're conscious of it or not. And so these Siddiqs, these prophets, were going through biblical, like Old Testament level struggles. But they were also revealing miraculous levels of insight, revelation, prophecy. Like think about the 1300s. Think about the 12 to 1300s, 11 to 1300s, right? This is the dark ages. This is where people were considered the most brutal, right? The most barbaric. But like go back further than that. Like people that have evolved by then. We're just not really focused on that because, we don't really think about it that much. But think about how dark and unevolved the consciousness was then. So it's like these people, they had to go through these intense sacrifices because they were elevating the whole planet. They were continuing their work. They weren't just giving up. They weren't just like, oh, I went through a struggle once and it really was something, but everything's been fine since then. It's like, no, every day he was talking about you jump out of the frying pan and into the fire. It's like when you want to be an elevated soul, you got work to do. You're not just like riding the waves of fun and flow and fulfillment. It's like you face a challenge and you elevate, and then the opponent elevates with you, and it's going to meet you at your same level every step of the way. There is going to be a challenge, and you have to elevate to meet that challenge. And then once you have elevated those sparks of light, it's like you don't go back. And if you really truly change and you've really transformed, it's like then you're revealing gold. This is that eternal investment, that eternal inheritance that you take with you, because once you've elevated sparks of light in your soul, it doesn't go backwards, it doesn't revert. You keep that elevated state. Okay, so having said that, Christ came to purchase some, to save some, to redeem some. He purchased strangers and made them his own. And he brought back his own whom he had laid down of his own will as a deposit. Not only when he appeared did he lay the soul of his own will as a deposit, but from the beginning of the world he laid down the soul for the proper moment according to his will. Then he came forth to take it back, since it had been laid down as a deposit. It had fallen into the hands of robbers and had been stolen, but he saved it. And he redeemed the good in the world and the bad. So Christ came to purchase some, to save some, to redeem some. He purchased strangers and made them his own. And he brought back his own whom he had laid down his own will as a deposit. So, in a mundane way, Jesus came and purchased strangers. When he says he purchased strangers and made them his own, he brought back his own whom he had laid down as a deposit. So his own were the Hebrew people, God's own chosen people. Strangers were the Gentiles, who didn't have that Hebrew basis. They didn't know the God of Abraham. And so when it talks about he laid down his soul as a deposit, that means that the Christ, the force of the Christ before embodiment, this is like Christ, the force of Christ is God's manifest personality that can come into the world and interact with human beings, right? It's formed enough to where we can communicate, we can articulate and perceive what and who this Christ is. So the Christ from the beginning has been taking his soul and putting it down as a deposit for basically the fact that mankind has so much to correct in this world that we're almost like the interest is too much. It's like we can never get ahead. It's like it's always going to keep piling on and piling on and piling on. Because while we're here, yes, we are elevating sparks of light and correcting our tikkun and working off that darkness, right? We're breaking those shells of negativity to reveal more light. It's just that when we go through struggles and we get more negative about it, and we get beat down, and we get despondent, and we get depressed, and we get bitter, and we get angry, we shut down, and we close off, those are those layers building right back up. And it's dimming that light and locking it in. And so think about the consciousness at that time, the dark ages, right? I mean, look how far we've come, and like we're still just like pieces of shit. I mean, my God, turn on a TV, right? So think about that. Like, we would never be able to get ahead because we would just be constantly, it would be just too much, right? There would be people are resigning themselves to, like, what's the point? Nihilism. It's like, what's the point of it all? Who cares? There's nothing to enjoy, nothing to look forward to, nothing's fulfilling. It's because the outside world will never be fulfilling. We're just grasping at these empty vessels because we want the light within them, but we think it's the outer thing that gives us that light, when really the fulfillment is just the connection to the light. And when you have that without the stuff, then you can enjoy the stuff better, because you're like, oh, this isn't what's really fulfilling me. This can come and go and I'll be fine. But what does fulfill me is having a moment where I see the face of the Creator working in my life, even amidst a struggle, and I feel awe and wonder in that, right? So Christ, even before, like, the whole reason Christ was incarnated as a human being was to come to earth, to live out a process, and to work off the cocoon of mankind. When Jesus came, he didn't really have a tikkun. His soul was fairly pure. It was 100% pure. So he didn't really have any tikkun to work off. So he was working off the tikkun of other people. So, like, and there's no process. So, okay, I need to circle back. Adam and Eve, the fall of mankind. We've been talking about this leading up to Rosh Hashanah. The only reason that any of our souls come into the world to incarnate as human beings with the flesh suit is to go through the process of interacting with other people and life and challenges in order to elevate the sparks of light, to change this density into light. This all started when Adam and Eve, so Adam was the soul of all mankind. And then a piece of him was taken out to make Eve so that they could have company, right? God, when he was all in the one, like, light, was lonely. It was just like, nothing to do out here but just sit and, like, stew, right? And so light wanted to share. Light created vessel. This is the vessel. The soul is the vessel. The universe was the vessel for the light to share with, right? So the only point, okay, so then when Adam and Eve split off in these two little souls together, and they ate of the fruit, and they were like, oh no, we made a mistake. And that was okay. But then they felt so much shame that they no longer had affinity with the light of the Creator, and they became separated from the Creator. And originally, Adam and Eve, before the fall, they actually were here in the astral realm of dreams and symbolism and the non-physical, but, like, in the dream world, really. And so they didn't even have to eat. They could just look at the apple and draw the light from the apple. They could look at the animal and draw the light from the animal. Oh, look at that spinach over there. How delicious that cabbage looks. Drawing the energy from it. They didn't need to eat it. There was no need for a process. Everything was perfect in total perfection. It was the shame that caused them to fall, right? When they put on clothing, right? When God said, who told you were naked? And they were like, well, we were naked. We had to put something on. The fall brought them here into the flesh. This is the skin, the clothing that they put on. Before, they were naked. They were spirits. They were the light. They had a soul with a personality, but there was no density yet. And so that fall became the negativity that we as all souls now share, right? We are just splinters of those original divine masculine and divine feminine energies that were the birth of all souls in the world. So when they started having children, our souls started splintering off. And that's why we have soul groups and soul families and, people that we have this affinity with. We were all one at one point. And so now we've started breaking off into these like pieces of soul that just keep splitting. So, where are we? Okay, yes. So the only reason there is a physical world is to do the tikkun healing, is to do that soul correction, to get us back into affinity with the light, so then we can again rise in consciousness and be one with the light once more. So the process is the only point of being on earth. If we don't have any process left, if we've corrected all our tikkun, then we leave this body and then we die. And if we're super elevated, we might become an ascended master. But the point is that Jesus didn't have a process to go through when he came here. His whole process was for the sake of sharing, for the sake of being a light in the world. So he came with no tikkun, but he took on everyone's tikkun. He was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I don't want these people to live in hell, just in constant darkness and struggle and toil and slavery. I do not want them to go into this limbo of slavery in the afterlife, because once we leave this world, we have the consciousness that we have. We take that with us. And that's why Jewish people pray to elevate the souls of those who have passed, because it's like we're still trying to help you with your process so you can elevate and be released, right? There's also, well, I'm not going to go there. Too much of a sidetrack. Okay. So Jesus then, having no process of his own, is here to correct the tikkun of all mankind. When we go through tikkun correction, the things that purify our soul from its negativity are challenges, pain, illness, sleep, death, humiliation, basically discomfort purifies us from negativity. And so Jesus didn't have negativity. And he didn't have, he had struggles and he had challenges to overcome in his life, but basically his mission was to go out and do his thing in teaching and spreading the light. He had things like his family probably wanting him to be a healer where in the village where everybody came to him and they could make an income, but Jesus needed to go out on tour. So, he had to be a rebel. Jesus had to deal with people like not agreeing with him. He had to deal with people talking shit. Like, you're evil, you're demonic, you're hanging out with druggies and tax collectors, and you went over across the lake when you weren't supposed to and started mingling with the Gentiles. And Jesus was like, I don't need to mingle with y'all. Y'all have our beliefs. I'm trying to take these to the people who are like struggling over there. Like, they need us. This is where the work is, not here. Y'all are taken care of. I deal with the same thing with people who are like, why are you reading tarot? Tarot is blah, 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 blah. Why are you doing this? Why don't you just have a Jesus Loves You channel and blah, blah, blah? Why can't you just be palatable and be like, all the churchy people? And it's like, well, because that's not palatable for me, because the people that I talk to have had religious trauma. They can't handle the lingo, the culture of the church people. And I'm sorry, but again, where was this whole thing? It had fallen into the hands of robbers and had been stolen, but he saved it. And it's like, yeah, the message has been sort of sidetracked now. It's not as pure as it once was, right? Sidetrack off, right? But, it's like, I'm doing the work of going across the lake, right? I am here with us, the people who can't deal with that, and they're seeing through it, and they're like, there's something off about this whole setup anyway. I know that there's deeper truth here, and I'm more worried about that than like the culture and like, the country club aspect of this, okay? So the point is that, Jesus took flack for doing what his father, the work of his father. But otherwise, and I mean, he was an enemy of the state, right? But like, he wasn't getting into his own little struggles. Like, he didn't have like Jesus wasn't like, a player, and he had to get over his like relationship issues. He wasn't on drugs. Like, he didn't have to get over addiction. Like, he wasn't, like a sarcastic person who put people down. Like, he didn't have these things to get over. And he wasn't like creating, like, he wasn't circling through like difficult lessons to learn over and over again. Like, why can't I ever just like get this straight in my mind? Or why can't I quit that guy? All of those things. It's like Jesus wasn't dealing with that, right? His tikkun was for the whole world. So he was having to deal with the Roman Empire on his ass. He had to deal with everybody thinking he was demonic and wrong and nobody listening to him. And then he had to deal with the crucifixion. So yes, he's taken on all of the sin in the world. I'm going to take on like these people don't have enough power to reveal the light that it's going to take to buy off their negativity. And I don't want them to have to suffer. And so I am pure enough. When the sacrifice was chosen in the days of old, and I guess same now, if someone's going to choose an animal to sacrifice, you're not grabbing the scrawny animal that's not going to make a good sell. And you're like, well, this is going to go to waste, so I'll just use this for my sacrifice. You have to choose the best thing, the most pristine, prized, special, valuable thing to sacrifice, the thing that is most dear, the most precious and perfect specimen to give up. That's when it's a sacrifice. Jesus was pristine and perfect and pure as a soul and as a human being who came here and walked the earth. So he had the amount of light and power to turn all that darkness into light. And so he was like, I'm going to put myself down on deposit for this, knowing in the other realms what that would mean. Coming into the physical, it would mean pain. It would mean death. It would mean being outside of his comfort zone. It would mean sacrifice. And so when you think about how brutal the crucifixion was, the beating of Jesus even before he was nailed on the cross and left to hang and suffocate in his drowning in his own lung fluid, stabbed in the side, a crown of thorns put on his head, taunted, mocked by everyone. And even for him at one point on the cross, he looked up at God and he said, why have you forsaken me? Haven't I done everything you've ever wanted me to do? Like, what is this? Why is this happening to me? And like, we've all felt this way. Like, I did what you wanted me to do. I was going to sacrifice my son, and then you said I didn't have to, and then my wife died. Like, or I didn't take the woman, and then immediately I got sold to slavery. Like, why? And there's a purpose. There's a purpose to everything. And so Christ came to purchase some, to save some, to redeem some. He purchased strangers and made them his own. And he brought back his own, whom he had laid down of his own soul, of his own will as a deposit. Not only when he appeared did he lay down his own soul and will as a deposit, but from the beginning of the world, he laid down the soul for the proper moment according to his will. So like, it wasn't just like, here, I'll take, this on. It was like, from the time of mankind, I'm going to take it all. And the fact that he didn't deserve the punishment he was receiving on the cross, like, that's the whole point. It was like, yeah, that's what makes it even shittier, right? It has to be that intense to pay off all of this debt. And it has to be unfair, and it has to be as brutal as possible. because you have to be broken completely to let all of this light out. Now, also what Jesus was doing was not only did he make that sacrifice, like in the metaphysical like world that's going on, but also his energy level, like his vibration, his frequency, his level of consciousness, like just being here on earth, it was almost as if it's like hitting a tuning fork. Ding. And that frequency was introduced to mankind for the first time. And so it gave us something to rise up to. It gave us something to have affinity with that could get us over the hump of our archaic, primal, animalistic nature. Then he came forth to take it back, since it had been laid down as a deposit. It had fallen into the hands of robbers and had been stolen, but he saved it. And he redeemed the good in the world and the bad. So it had fallen into the hands of robbers. Like the path of awakening, like our energy, our consciousness, the truth, the beauty, the opponent, the dark side is always trying to take that light all week long, and before we've been talking about the 10 days of repentance because we're being tested and we don't want to short circuit because the enemy, the opponent is just waiting. So like Rosh Hashanah and the 10 days of repentance, it's like here, this light is coming in through our crown, right? I love this lamp back there. I can use it as an illustration. And so our vessel is open right now. And when the opponent tricks us and gets us to short circuit and sin or blow a fuse or, have a temper tantrum or break down in despair and resign the self to failing, to quitting, it's like that light is then stolen by the opponent. And there's a male opponent and a female opponent. And when you trip up the first time, it's like you spill a little bit of light out and the male opponent gets that. But the female opponent comes in and she's like, oh, God, you're such a failure. You're such an embarrassment. Nobody loves you. You're so not worthy. You're so shameful. You should be ashamed of yourself. Like, you don't deserve to live. Like, why are you even here? Like, she's that one that gets in your head and makes you feel worthless. She changes the way you feel about yourself. The shame, it wasn't the mistake that caused Adam and Eve to fall out of affinity with the light. They were being creator consciousness, kind of. They were having affinity. They were, having sovereignty. That maybe could have been corrected had they kept the consciousness there. But it was the shame. Oh, I can't believe we've done this. Oh, we don't deserve the light. I can't even face God right now. I am naked. I am ashamed. That shame, that does not have affinity with the light of the Creator. The Creator doesn't have shame. The Creator doesn't have guilt, doesn't have separation. And so they fell to this earth, right? Same for the female Satan. When they want to steal your light, when they want to steal it all and get the whole cup fallen over and just spilled out everywhere, shame and guilt. So always just know, if you make a mistake, try to own it. Try to do what you can to turn it around. But whatever you do, don't get downtrodden in shame, because and don't resign yourself to despair, and don't give up, because that's when you spill out all that light and it leaves your spiritual bank account. And it is then shrouded under a shell of negativity that you then have to work off through raising your consciousness, going through the process, going through challenges and lessons in your life, illness, humiliation, public disgrace, like sleep, like whatever, it requires, you'll have to go through that process. Okay, so then he came forth to take it back, since it had fallen down as a deposit. It had fallen into the hands of robbers and been stolen. Okay, so not only is the light being constantly tried to be stolen by your opponent that's always rising to your level, but the message of Christ, the message of God, it has been shaky at best all along, it's like people have wanted to hijack it. They've wanted to make it this. They've wanted to make it that. They've now more than ever, it's like people put their spin on even different types of Christianity. It's like, it's not enough that like, yeah, now we had the denominations, but now it's like, there's all the different groups of evangelicals and their fervor about politics. And then politics has taken Christianity and it has manipulated the whole thing so that they can get these people to vote for them. And it's like the government, the politicians, even back then, the Roman Empire, literally Christianity was organized and formed by the Roman Empire. They got the Nicene Creed together and were like, okay, the Christians are out of control. We can't control them anymore. We need to organize this and approve of it and basically regulate it like drugs, like legalizing marijuana. So we'll legalize Christianity because it was illegal, but this is going to be the regulations. These are the gospels that are going to be okay to be part of the narrative. This pretty much keeps everybody in line. It keeps all of the patriarchy in charge, keeps everybody afraid that they're going to burn in hell forever. And there's no hope of redemption because they are such pieces of shit. And basically they need to follow all the rules, be good, be sweet, love Jesus. And then that'll be it. And then we'll go to church and everybody bring money to pay for the church. And then, at some point we'll all unite around our common enemies, and then we'll get everybody to like jump on our agenda, and it'll be all kosher. In the meantime, we can have like this $1 billion industry, and basically start ecosystems around this. So let's get this working, right? Jesus flipping the fucking table in the temple. What the fuck are you doing then? Making this a marketplace? You're selling my Father. You're selling truth. You're selling what is priceless that you can't put a price on, and you're diluting it. You're reducing it to nothing. It had fallen into the hands of robbers and it had been stolen, but he saved it. And he redeemed the good in the world and the bad. The thing about the crucifixion and the promise of the Christ and the miracle and the gift is that he was not discriminating who got saved, who was invited and who wasn't. I laid my soul on the line to save everyone. I've already paid for you. You're already good to go. All you need to do is redeem your ticket. I, the Christ, am this frequency that is always dwelling in the heart center. And this force of healing and miracles and awakening is always pushing gently up against this portal, this bridge, knocking quietly on the door. But you have to invite that in because we have free will. Not only that, Christ consciousness, it takes participation. It's like you activate it, and then the work will begin, but it doesn't happen on its own. You've got to be willing. You've got to get in there and do something with it. But when you call on the Christ to help you, the Christ will be there. The promise of Jesus Christ is that consciousness can change in a lightning strike. A miracle can happen instantaneously. It doesn't take months and weeks for miracles to happen. Jesus was reluctant to do the miracles that we could call like parlor tricks, the magic, the turning water into wine, turning the loaves into many, the fishes and loaves, healing the sick, healing the blind, raising the dead. It wasn't that he was against healing these people, but it was the fact that he knew that he needed to show people an example of what is possible. But he knew that people would get obsessed over the magic trick and completely miss the point of the message. We don't need to obsess over the fact that the blind man got his vision back. we need to obsess over the fact that in an instant, what was once blindness and darkness and the inability to see the meaning of anything or the purpose or why things are happening, it's like in an instant you can have a revelation and be like, I get it now. I see it. I see now. I can see it all so clearly. Like when you have it happen so fast, you're like, oh, wow. It really gives you a different concept of what's possible. And then you talk to a person after this who feels hopeless, like nothing is ever going to change, that they can never change, that their life will never change, that it's useless, right? And you're like, no. When you get it, like you'll have this moment at some point where it'll just click and you'll understand, and you don't have to resign yourself and you don't have to throw in the towel, because it doesn't mean that it's going to take forever for things to change. Things can change in an instant. We can change. We can be healed. We can be redeemed. That is the promise. It's not just that we die and get to go to heaven and we get to eat anything we want. We all get a mansion and the streets are gold. It's that the chaos can quiet. The depression can let go. The anxiety can be broken. The fibromyalgia can melt away. The sadness can be relieved and become compassion and depth and strength. Sometimes it doesn't feel like we can ever get over something, or that we struggle with these parts of ourselves, right? But we get so bogged down in the minutia, in the struggle of just swimming upstream, that we forget that it can all change in an instant. And that's why miracles happen, right? It's so that we can see, we can be reminded. And I mean, how many miracles has my family seen? And yet I have my days, right? My family members have their days where we forget all the miracles. How is that ever possible on earth? Yet we're like bogged down by some small, trivial, minutia. Robbers can come and take this in an instant. We have to consciously protect this and lay our soul down to protect it. Our ego, our soul, those things that need to be corrected, they can be healed, but we have to be able to sacrifice them. And usually, in order to heal them, we have to put Isaac on the slab. It's those parts of ourselves that we're so precious about. Oh, my pride. This hurts my pride. I can't put Isaac on that slab. I love this too much. It's too precious to me. I can't let it go. It's the things that are the most hard to let go of, where we have to face that discomfort, where we have to face that fear, that breaks open the most light to be revealed, right? The hardest parts of our ego to lay down and give up, that is what opens the moment for the miracle to happen. And the belief, the mustard seed. I wish I had the eye of a needle and a mustard seed. Hold on. I grew my own mustard grains and let them go to seed. And I harvested a mustard grain seed and put it in this bottle. All it takes is faith the size of a mustard seed. Can y'all see this? That mustard seed? This is all it takes to open up a miracle. It's the eye of a needle is the opening. All it takes is the opening, the pinprick of a needle that can open up an entire world, that can open up new consciousness, new universes, new possibilities in your life. This little mustard seed, what do you want to bet it would go through the eye of a needle? The reason why the rich man cannot pass through the eye of a needle is because they can't put down their baggage. They want to bring everything with them. The eye of the needle, just for context understanding, was a passage for traders to pass through. It was through these rocks, and it was so narrow that they would have to take all the packs off of their beasts of burden to get through. And so merchants wouldn't want to go through there. They'd lose all of their investments, right? So it's easier to, what was the verse? It's easier to do something than get a rich man through the eye of a needle, or something like the rich man's camel through the eye of a needle, or something like that. But the meaning of it is that, like, we hold all of these physical ideas, this material world, so precious. We believe it so much that we think that it's real. We think it's so definite. But all it would take was a mustard seed and an opening in our consciousness the size of a pinprick, the eye of a needle, for the miracle to get through. To let go of all that baggage, to let go of our pride, to let go of our expectations and our projections, to just let it go, to let go of our grudges. Ooh, I want to bring those with me. Fucking can't stand you. You did this to me that one time. No, but yeah, like letting go of heartache and disappointment, right? That puts a wet blanket on your hope and on your ability to get your hopes up or really enjoy anything, right? So yeah, the promise of the Christ is not just that we'll go to heaven. It's so that thy kingdom can come, that we will have peace within, that we will have a serene consciousness and insight and understanding as to what is going on in our life, like how the lessons tie together. Why is this happening? What is this really about? What is this that I need to see, that I need to heal in myself, or that I need to do something about this? But yeah, Christ came to purchase some, to save some, and to redeem some. So it's not like only the good people get in or the bad people don't, right? When Jesus was on the cross, the two people behind him that were being crucified, it was like, I think they were thieves. One guy was a thief. I can't remember, but they were criminals. I mean, most of the people up there were criminals. And Jesus looked at him and said, "It's an honor to die with you today." And every soul is equal. Every soul is a piece of the Creator. It's not just those who have like, been good or bad, or, those are good, get in, and those who aren't good, don't. Look at all the people in the world. Think about someone in absolute squalor and darkness and despair. That person is a child of the Creator. That person has the Creator in them. They're just under so many shells of that darkness, right? The Christ can see the value in that person. The Christ can see the spirit in that person. The Christ can see the soul that needs to be saved, right? But we don't see that when we look at these other people, the other people in the world. We don't necessarily see that. We don't see it when, Joe Schmo gets on our nerves every single day and we can't stand it. And it's just like, oh, that just gets on my skin, Everyone has a ticket. Everyone is worth saving. Your ticket is waiting. My ticket has been bought. But it's up to us to invite this in, to invite the Christ to be activated within the heart, to start the process of the awakening, of the ascension of consciousness, right? And the transcendence of the soul. Christ came to purchase some, to save some, to redeem some. He purchased strangers and made them his own. And he brought back his own, whom he had laid down his own soul, he purchased strangers and made them his own. And he brought back his own, whom he had laid down of his own will as a deposit. Not only when he appeared did he lay down his soul of his own will as a deposit. This is a hard thing to read. Not only when he appeared did he lay the soul of his own will as a deposit, but from the beginning of the world he laid down the soul for the proper moment according to his will. Then he came forth to take it back, since it had been laid down as a deposit. He had fallen into the hands of robbers and had been stolen, but he saved it, and he redeemed the good in the world and the bad. And many times when it talks about Christ coming in the Bible, I feel like what I've noticed is that it kind of was always like implying that he's been here before and he's come back again and things like that. And I don't know, I always think that it's interesting, but that a certain essence of the Christ has been here all along, putting the deposit down by his own will, like with free will, it's our ego will that we want to surrender to the care of the higher self so that we can then replace that or redeem that with the will of our higher self, which is the will that's connected to the spirit, which is the will that has affinity with the creator, with the light. Not just our small self, not just our small limited thinking. And he redeemed the good in the world and the bad. And so, meaning too that he balanced those forces, good and bad. Jesus, the Christ, is the central pillar, the central column. On this tree of life here, we have the right-hand column of mercy. We have the left-hand column of judgment. And these are the forces that are sort of pulling against one another in virtue and vice. And this central column, this is where things are brought into balance, into stability, into neutrality, into, stabilization, equality. They're balanced. And so this is where the pillar of consciousness is, right? This is our lower state, the human consciousness. Up here, Yesod, we get to in the world of prophecy. And then we go up further, and that's the Christ. That's as high as human beings can get in this incarnation. After this starts to go any higher, we get so abstract that we start losing the part of us that makes us us. We start to reabsorb into the all. It's like when the Old Testament says that Enoch walked with God all of his days and then he was not. And then he became Metatron. It's because Enoch was so transcended that he dissipated into reabsorption into the Creator once more. And then was formed into Metatron, the highest archangel, right? Which is a force that moves through the world, organizing and governing the other angels. Okay, so I think that we have gone on long enough. It's over an hour, so sorry. Tomorrow or today when you're watching this is Yom Kippur. So that is the final 10th day of the 10 days of repentance, or the 40 days of repentance of Teshuvah. And so this is the day that we manifest the new soul and it enters the body. Over next week, it will be Sukkot, where all this light is going to be pouring in to like activate the soul. And it's all this extra zhush for the year. And we need to stay in a really high vibrational, like laughing, comedy, dancing, singing, joyous, abundant, gratitude. Like next week, that we have affinity with those things. We're going to we are turbocharging our power for the year of our light with the affinity with the light. So tomorrow, if you wanted to say participate in Yom Kippur, the fast starts at sundown. You must abstain from working You must abstain from food and water. You must abstain from bathing or washing or brushing of the teeth. I'm not sure if you can do the kosher hand washing of the Yud-K Vav-K. I'm not sure about that. But I know you can't use soap. You can't clean yourself because what you're doing is restricting the comforts of the flesh. You also cannot wear perfume, no makeup, no hair products, no lotions, no oils. You can't wear leather, and no sex, no boom boom. And so that goes from Sunday night to Monday night at sundown. The blowing of the shofar will happen again, and that seals it all in. And if you want to, you can stream this through the Kabbalah Center at Kabbalah.com. You would go to Kabbalah.com. You sign up for a free account unless you want to become a member. And I think it's like $40 or $50 a month. Totally worth it. But I get it really into the classes and things. Otherwise, there's a whole lot on the website that you can get to for free. The High Holy Holidays are usually like a pay what you can. You can donate anything from $1 to $0 to $25, whatever you want. You can pay their suggested price. But tomorrow will be like a pay what you can, pay what you want live stream. And so after you set up your account, you will go, it's like in the upper left-hand side, there's a tab that says events and classes. You'll look for the tab that says live events, live streaming, something to that nature. When you click on that, you'll have like a list of all of these like classes listed out. Just scroll until you see Yom Kippur East Coast broadcast with Michael and Monica Berg. You're going to want to choose that one because that's the one that they're pretty much broadcasting, but that's going to be in real time, New York time, Eastern Standard Time. Some of the other streaming, it will be done in those countries by the people who are speaking that native language. So if you don't speak English, you might be able to stream it in your native language. There are Kabbalah centers in different parts of the world. But if you're looking for the main broadcast, I believe it will be East Coast broadcast with Michael and Monica Berg under live events and classes. All right, you guys. Well, I hope you have a Shana Tova, a Happy New Year. I hope your soul stays nice and sparkly and clean. So you can have a nice, beautiful year full of blessings to come. And otherwise, just pray to Jesus because your ticket's already been bought. You know, the difference is Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, that's about our merit. It's about what we can do to change. And this gives us blessings for a year, like on this physical realm. This is what we merit in this physical world. When you're like saved by the Christ, this is something that you don't necessarily earn or merit. This is something that's already been bought and paid for. The Christ earned this for us. Now, it won't necessarily change your level of fulfillment or your experience with life if you don't do anything to change. You know, if you don't take on the discipleship, the discipline of Christ consciousness. Many people are Christians who don't know the first thing about Christ consciousness. It's never occurred to them at all. They just go to church and they're just trying to go to heaven. And they don't really care. Those are not disciples of the Christ. They're just people who go to church and they're Christian, but they may not have the depth of fulfillment and awe that one would have when you put in effort, when you make the investment, right? So yeah, it's like when you're saved by Christ, you're saved, like your soul has been redeemed. But I would urge you to continue to take on the yoke of discipleship, of actually learning how to elevate and transcend the ego, because that's what gives you more relief. It gives you more fulfillment. It gives you a better life experience. Challenges will come, but the more certainty that you have, the more faith that you have built, the more, I mean, you don't have to just have this one mustard seed. You can have more. So you're not limited to just the one. It's a lot easier with more than one. But yeah. All right, y'all. I hope you have a great new year. I hope you have a great eternity. And, these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Ciao.